Okay, welcome back to another episode of SL24/7. I am your guest host, Missy Marazzo, and I'm here for a very special episode with Miss Alli Burns, our former director of peer support.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to get on started. So our first question is, who are you?
Yeah, wow, what a question. So as you said, I'm Alli Burns. I am originally from Virginia, so Fairfax, Virginia, and then I got recruited to row up at the University of Delaware, which brought me to lovely Newark. When I was a sophomore, I got involved in the house, and so I started with Sean's house right when it opened, so September of 2020. I started as a peer volunteer, and it was honestly like the best thing that could have happened to my college career, if I'm being honest. And so I was rowing at that point, started volunteering my sophomore year, became a peer lead my senior year of college, and then was the director of peer support for the year between undergrad and then when I just started grad school. So now I'm currently an MSW student at UNC Chapel Hill. In my first year of my master's in social work degree.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So what about being a peer volunteer made you want to go into social work?
Yeah, so I think for me, it was the best opportunity to be able to get hands-on experience in this kind of field. And, you know, everyone, I feel like between years of undergrad, it's like, get an internship, do this, do that. And I did have internships, like I had things that I did. For the most part, I feel like, though, with like human service type internships and type experiences, at least in this country, I will say it's a lot of just observation, which is great, and I think you learn so much from that. But I think the really special part about Sean's house is that I felt like it gave me a much more accurate perspective as to whether this was something that I wanted to turn into a career and whether it was something that I saw myself doing in the future. Being able to be in a space where I'm actively having people that I'm able to support. And although what I did at the house wasn't clinical work, obviously not being licensed or having a master's degree, I do think that the experiences that I had were as close to clinical without being so, and was really able to just serve as encouragement that it was something not only that I did indeed have a passion for, which I think was awesome validation, but also gave me the opportunity to feel like I actually had the capacity to do it as well, which was super encouraging going into a social work degree.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And you served as our director of peer support for a year. And how do you think that role specifically prepared you to go to grad school?
I would say it was a combination of navigating and helping peers navigate higher risk situations at the house. So part of my role as director of peer support being to support the peers at the house and the peer leads in things that were kind of reaching a threshold that they didn't necessarily feel prepared to handle, which is super fair, and was probably one of my favorite parts of the job, just being able to really be in tune with the staff and form connections there that I could develop trust for those people, because you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position, especially some of our high school peers. You know, I definitely at 16, 17 was not doing what I'm doing now. And so the fact that they do that, and the fact that I wanted to create a space where they felt comfortable to come with questions. And I think that was probably the most important part of that job to me.
Yeah, and that's so incredible. And it was so incredible to see you be able to do this and thrive in this position and then go on to UNC social work.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all that. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. So you just talked about how Sean's house has been such a great light in your life. But sometimes it's the locks that really help us appreciate that light.
Yeah.
So what has been a lock in your life?
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to think about and to process, because I think just the way I have grown to process and like the different ways that I lean on to process, including like my own personal experience and my faith background, it's hard for me to box something into being a lock. I do think that all of the locks, the big locks, now that I'm able to see where they got me, I can recognize that they were hard, but I also recognize how much they have like brought me to where I am and how purposeful that like whole growth process was. However, definitely recognizing that not every moment has been cheery, I will say, and I think this is pretty consistent throughout most of my work in the process. When I was 16, I lost a friend of mine to suicide when I was in high school, and as I mentioned earlier, at 16, at least when I was at 16, I was not prepared for that. Not saying that there's ever a position or stage of life that you're prepared for that kind of loss. However, I do think that there was a lot of growing that I needed to do in terms of like how to process and even how to have conversations about mental health. It would be a complete lie of me to say that I was always so comfortable having conversations about mental health and suicide equally, but also that I was necessarily receiving of other people sharing. I don't think that was always where I was in life, and I've always loved to chat, but about what just looked very different back then. And so when I experienced that loss, obviously it was a lot. That's not something that I wish for anyone to have to experience, especially at such a young age. However, seeing the way that it has facilitated connections that I've been able to make now in my life, and I think the light that comes from being able to share grief in lightening up those locks is something that you have to go through that for. And so I think for me, watching how it shaped my ability to help others heal and start that grieving process I'm never going to say it makes anything worth it, because that wouldn't be accurate, but I do think I can hold both of those feelings of experiencing sadness and wishing that I could go back and change the trajectory, while also being able to have gratitude for the way it's prepared me to serve other people.
That is such a beautiful answer, and I'm so sorry about the loss of your friend, but knowing how you took such a horrible and situation that no one should ever have to go through, and you really turned that into something positive in the way that it taught you how to have those connections, and sometimes it is the locks in our life that lead to the light, and allow you to appreciate the light a little bit more, because without rain there's no flowers, and that's just a very beautiful perspective, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're gonna keep on going here.
Yes.
So what is one piece of wisdom or knowledge that you have learned from your time here at the house?
One feels not satisfactory. And I think the reason why one doesn't feel like enough is because over the course of the 4.5 years that I was here, I think the house experienced so much growth, the house experienced so much change, and along with it, I experienced a lot of growth and a lot of change. I guess the key kind of pillar that I hold on to in leaving the house and when I talk about the house to other people, now that I'm more so out in the field, is the power of shared experience. And I've seen that right now. I'm working on a research project that is not necessarily it's not this population for sure. It's talking about stigma as well, but stigma surrounding HIV. And I think similarly, the common threads that I see there is how much a shared experience can help people to heal. And so I think being able to be vulnerable about situations that we've gone through and being vulnerable about things that don't look very pretty is really important, not only to allowing yourself to process and to heal from anything that's going on in your life, but also to allow other people to start that healing process too. And so I think there's obviously I'm going through school right now to be a clinical mental health professional, so I'm not going to say that I'm not going to take away from the credibility of that, but I think it was really eye-opening to realize how much of a impact I could make, not necessarily with that training, but just with an experience. And I think people minimize their experiences in terms of the impact that it can have for others. I never, if you asked me as a senior in high school or even a freshman in high school when I started rowing, I never would have thought that being a student athlete would allow me to connect with people in the way that it has, and being able to share about the challenges that come along with that when it is something that I think is put a little bit up on this pedestal of like this dream experience, you know, being able to be transparent about that and share that experience just as an initial connection, and watching conversations and relationships grow from there has just been a really powerful thing that I think I've been able to see way more clearly in this space than I necessarily would have anywhere else.
That's so cool too, because you really did watch the growth of the house. You've been here since the beginning. It's really cool that being a student athlete taught you that too, because that's not really in the rubric of being a student athlete.
Right, absolutely. Well, I think for a lot of people, I think they think their experience excludes them from being able to make a difference. And I think the narrative here being that no, your lived experience is what helps you to do that. That actually includes you in this process. And so I think switching the narrative of that, where it's not something that we're tucking away, it's not something that figure that out, all that out. You have to be perfect before you come here. You have to be perfect before you can help others. It's like being the most authentic version of yourself and being real about the fact that there's no one that goes through life without a luck, you know, and just that reality, and being able to actually like broadcast the fact that like that is so valuable, which I don't think most of the world, and including myself walking into it, like would have seen it that way. So I think just kind of switching that narrative of you don't need to cover everything up to be able to come here and like do good in other people's lives and your own.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think that applies to student athletes a lot too, because I think there's a lot of pressure to always be perfect and always perform, and that's not realistic. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that, Alli. So we're going to move on to our fourth question, which kind of encapsulates what we've been talking about. But who or what has been a lighthouse for you in your mental health journey?
Once again, I'm going to cop out by saying I don't think I can pick one. I will say, though, I do want to just highlight that house as a lighthouse. Not only everyone in it, because everyone that I have worked with as like in terms of like guests that have come in that I've been able to speak to, but also everyone that I've been able to work alongside has just made such an impact in my life, like beyond words, and extending beyond that is even as well board members, volunteer groups. It brings me so much joy, especially like coming back and being able to see basketball this year and being able to see kind of every single one of those positions, people that I've worked with in the schools at the Chons rooms, and people that come in with volunteer groups that like have their ticket for the event and are like, do you remember me? And I'm like, yes. I don't think there's a person in this house that I've spoken with that I will ever forget. And just the way that guests have been able to give me the opportunity, like I said, to be able to, every time I talk to someone, it continues to help me in my process. And so the gift of that is the gift of being able to feel like you're giving back, which is such a gift. And like I have so much gratitude for the people that I've been able to work alongside, people that I've been able to mentor, the training cohorts that I've been able to lead, getting emails from people that I've trained in the past, you know, like all of that just continues to fill me up. And in times that I may get stuck in my own narrative of I'm letting people down, I'm not good enough for this, school is hard, you know, which are all realities, but being able to have that backstop of the community here and beyond these four walls and within it, just to know that each one of those people like means so much and has contributed to just this huge light that I'm so grateful for. And I don't know, just being able to be here, I think back to my sophomore year as well. My freshman year of college, I was so excited, hit the ground running in August, was having a great time up until October. I was actually sharing this story this morning when I went to see some of the girls on the team. October hit me like a load of bricks, and I finished a race in Philly, and my mom drove me home instead of taking the bus, and I cried the entire way back. I sat in the Food Lion parking lot in Newark and was just in tears, and I was like, I made a mistake, I can't do this, I can't be here, I'm leaving. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't stay here. I felt like I was messing up everywhere I turned. And my mom definitely encouraged me. She was like, let's see if we can find light where you are rather than trying to look at something that looks shiny on the outside and just run to that, because you're not in that new situation that you think is so glamorous right now. And one of the things that one of those changes in that moment that I was able to make was to get involved with the house. It was not long after that. It was about January, so I did some stuff in October to obviously help out. But January, I was trying to make sure I was prepared for the semester, and I got the email about the house. I had no idea what it was. It was genuinely a house at that point. It was not Sean's house. And they had this email and they were like, do you want to be involved in this thing? You're a psych student and you'd be helping other people. And getting that email, sitting in Trabant and emailing, yes, please send me the link. I mean, that completely changed the trajectory of beyond my college experience. But my college years, my roommates can definitely attest to the fact that like this place was everything to me during my time here, in shaping who I was, in spending probably more time here than my actual house.
Yes.
But then even beyond, and allowing me to connect with the community that I was referring to earlier. So.
Yeah, and that's so beautiful, and I hope you know what a light you've had on this community. I think your impact on this place will outlive your college experience. It already has. And I think it's really beautiful that you talk about this house as a light to you, because you're such a light to us. And it really is cool to see that and to know what a big part this house has played in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
So we're going to move on to our 5th question now.
Okay.
So our mission is to educate, assist, and support, as I'm sure
Absolutely.
you're aware. So which role do you see as the most crucial at Sean's house?
I think at first glance, educate was huge for my role, just in terms of leading the peer support training and educating people on what peer support was, not only in the context of you want to do this, let me teach you how to do it, but also advocating for our peers on the outside, of people who, you know, may doubt a bunch of 16 to 24-year-olds trying to run a place, you know, which I totally understand. But being able to advocate for that, I think it's educating about what we're doing in here as much as preparing people to do it. However, I will always lean on support. I know assist and support being very similar, but at least in the context of here, assist being more of the amazing like financial assistance that we're able to provide for people through the scholarship and whatnot. But I do think that support piece is just the true core of what we do. And I know I'm very partial as the director, the former director of peer support. I think I would be remiss to not include that. But I do, you know, I just think that is what sets us apart from other things. Not that there are many things like Sean's house, unfortunately. Obviously making huge strides with the rooms, but I think being able to support on so many levels is so unique and so crucial to just well-being in general. And I'm really proud of this place for being able to recognize and advocate for support at all levels, ranging from crisis support when people come in here, like really just as a sort of last resort almost, and like I haven't found anything to like help me, I just need to come in here. But also on the other end of it of, you know what, my class was not too fun this morning and I think I'm gonna go get a cup of coffee and pet a dog, you know, and just being able to value both of those equally, I think is such a testament to the core beliefs of this house, and just being able to advocate for people to be supported at all stages. There's the analogy of the battery. It's like, don't let your battery run out before you recharge it. And so like get help at 50%. And so just being able to, yes, let people get help at 50%. If you're at 99, let's get you back to 100. Like grab a snack. But also if you're nearing 0, like we have the resources for that as well. So the fact that there's no bad time to come to Sean's house, and there is nothing too big or too small for this house, I think is just such a testament to how important that support piece is.
I couldn't agree more. I think I really agree with also what you're saying is you think it's going to be educate, because that's like what we're here to do, is educate people on mental health, but supporting is the big part of it. And I think they also go hand in hand. I think
absolutely
when you're supporting people, you're also educating them about how to support other people, and supporting and educating them on like, these things are important, these things are real. And as much as they all tie in together, I think support is really the backbone of what we do here. And it's really cool to see people come in for the first time, and even if they still aren't feeling 100% when they walk out knowing that there is someone in their corner. And I think exactly what you said, like, that is the backbone of this place, is
100%.
being able to have that community and support.
And to your point too about educate and support, coinciding to, yes, educating on the supports that we offer, but I think also helping people, educating people that they're not alone. Like, and it's not, sure, it's not formal education, it's not something that may be evidence-based, but it's real. You know, it's real that they're not the only person that has struggled. You know, it's not going to be that there's someone that has walked the same life as you have. And even if people do, we know that people respond to things really differently, but helping people to understand themselves, helping people to reflect that their experiences are challenging and that it's okay that they're struggling is, I think, just as valuable as knowing X from Y, you know?
Yeah. I really like the way you put that. Education does not have to be you're sitting in a classroom, you're looking at a PowerPoint. Yeah. It could be as simple as you're not alone, and that's someone learning that for the first time. Mm-hmm. Support leads us so nicely into our next question. So if you are helping a friend, what are 3 ways that you always go to support them?
Mm-hmm. One thing that I think has taken me a while to learn, and is probably more learned from my own experience of getting helped, is asking people what they're hoping for.
Yes.
I think that is huge in terms of allowing people to feel like they're, and I'm going to use the term recovery, and I know that there's a lot of narrative around what that means, but I use recovery very holistically of whatever is going on. Like, I know that recovery can oftentimes be correlated with substance use, which it is, but I think in terms of recovery, what people are looking for and what would be helpful to them is so important for them to know and for them to feel like they have ownership over their recovery journey. And so I think that is key for me at this point, is just, are you hoping for advice? Are you hoping for someone to just listen to you? Are you hoping for strategies? You know, I think a lot of people, most people, because I don't stop talking about mental health, know that I have experience with walking people through things. So I do have my little, you know, breathing exercises, like, I don't know, crisis planning, just different things that I find have been helpful for other people. But if I have someone coming to me that just simply, what's going to be best for them in that moment is to say any and everything, and just to feel that weight lift from not having to carry that alone anymore, I'm there for that. And so I think getting an accurate read and being transparent with, I want to be able to serve you the best that I can and support you. What does that look like right now? And if you don't know, totally good. We can go in one direction and you can tell me, hey, Alli, that's not helpful, and we'll pivot, and that's okay. So I think that for me has been really important to start to recognize, because I think when I was feeling more nervous about being in a room with someone and supporting them, I felt like I just needed to, like, say all this stuff to try and give as much information as I could. And so I think not necessarily being in stress, being able to find my calm in that moment and sit with someone and be like, what would be helpful right now, is huge. Second to that, making sure that someone is safe and knows when or what it might look like in their life when they're not safe.
Yeah, it's really important.
And I think that can, I won't say that's a universal thing, because I do think that there are some situations where prompting someone, like, are you safe with yourself right now? If they're, you know, like, maybe this is their first conversation around mental health, I do understand that that can be jarring if someone isn't thinking that. Not that the narrative is true, it is a total misconception that you'll be introducing that idea to them, and I think that debunking that is really important. However, in order to facilitate the conversation, I do think that sometimes asking that out of nowhere can be a lot, but if it is someone that's using language that I think may be alluding to something, just making sure that checking in with someone and being able to ask that question of, are you safe with yourself, or are you thinking about harming yourself? And then from there, if that is the case, addressing that. But if it's not the case, just kind of having the conversation of, what would things in your life look like if you did think that, if you were to get to a point where you were feeling unsafe, what would that look like? And what would you be able to see in your life change that you would know that that was happening? And from there, how would you be able to tap into supports? Just kind of trying to, like I said earlier, like educate people on what that process can look like for them, so that the first time they are experiencing distress or these heightened emotions, that they're not in that deep water alone. So I think that would be a second thing. And a third thing, I think, is just being honest, and being honest about where I am in the conversation, being honest about experiences I've had in my own life, if that's something that I think would be helpful for them. Obviously not making it that it turns into my own support session, but being able to navigate, like, when it may be helpful to hear that they're not alone in that moment. And so I think that I've had ample opportunity to work with at the house, and being able to kind of like break that wall down by sharing with someone that I may have been through a situation or may have felt a similar emotion that, looking from the outside, they never would have thought that I would have felt before. And so just leading with that honesty in the conversation as well. Or if there's something that I really have no experience with, being honest about that too. And just saying, wow, I would have never thought about that, or I can't imagine what you're going through, and I'm really sorry that this is so challenging for you right now. Either one of those directions, but just that focus on honesty in that moment, I think it's huge as well.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think something you said that is really important is asking what people want to get out. I think something that comes with peer support, being a peer supporter for your first time, at least in my own experience, you have a lot of imposter syndrome about that. You're like, who am I to be doing this? How do I know what they want out of this situation?
Yeah.
Asking is huge, because you don't know if you don't ask. But I think starting that conversation with, okay, what is it that you want? How am I going to be able to help you in the best way?
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of things stem from, and not that it's a universal like truth by any stretch, but I think a lot of things stem from people feeling like they're out of control, or feeling like they've lost control in their situation. And so I think turning that back over to someone and being like, here, maybe I can't control what's going on in your relationships, or I can't control what's going on in the classroom, or I can't control your situations outside of here, but what I can do is like offer you back control over this conversation, and being able to empower them in that way. Obviously not in a way that like adds pressure to the stress that they're already feeling, but I think sometimes showing people that they do have power over something, even if it is as little as just a conversation between you and me, can really like be healing in a lot of other like spaces in their life.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So thank you so much for sharing. I think that can help a lot of people listening. Yeah, who don't know what to do when someone comes to them. It's a stressful situation. So
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Okay, Miss Alli Burns, we have one last question.
Okay.
And it has just been such a joy to be able to sit down and do this with you. So this is like a big one. So how do you find hope and meaning in life?
How do I find hope and meaning in life? I feel, I don't know if this is going to answer it fully.
That's okay.
I think I'm going to translate hope and meaning in terms of how I find purpose.
Beautiful.
Because I think that hope can sometimes be very situational, and I think that purpose is can be a little bit more consistent, which I think can be helpful, having that consistency throughout. And to that, I would say leaning on the various parts that I see in my identity has been really helpful with that. And I talk about this a lot in like a student athlete context, I will say. But if you have 100% of yourself and you're able to pour it into however many different areas, no one tells you if you have one area or if you have one area of 100% or 100 areas of 1%. Personally, I think 100 areas of 1% would be a lot to balance, but I think one area of 100% is really scary.
Yeah.
And so for me, being able to find purpose, which I think for me translates to hope and meaning, is leaning into and being very intentional with how I allocate my 100%, and recognizing the things that are important to me, the things that fill me up, the things that make me feel like I'm making a difference, the things that utilize the skills that I value in myself, and being able to allocate part of that 100% into different spaces to fulfill those, I think has been huge to me, being able to find more purpose and meaning in myself. And by doing that, I feel more grounded and less susceptible to the waves of life. Caveat: I don't have it all together. Unless, if in case that was the perception, I don't. And there are still things that rock me. There are still times when a lot of times when I call my roommates, call my mom, call you, reach out for help from my supervisors, from the people in my life that I lean on. So I'm not going to say that I don't get tossed and turned by the waves of life. However, I think that being able to have those different areas of my life that I can lean on to find my purpose and to be able to evaluate my self-worth in a way that I can always see, even if one area is falling short, even if school is really hard and I'm starting to second guess, maybe I'm not the student that I thought I was, but I know that I am the friend that I thought I was. Or maybe my friends and I just got in a fight, but I know that I am the daughter and the sister that I thought I was. Or if things are hard at home, then I can go back to the stuff that I've been doing here. I am the person of support that people can lean on. And so I think having those areas, all of which are important to me, but isn't just one area, so that when one is, feeling a little bit more weighted than the others, I can lean on those other spaces. I think that's been able to anchor me a little bit more to be able to tolerate those times when something feels like it's falling apart. At least it's something, and it's not everything.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I don't know if that answered the
No,
question.
it really did, because I think, to your point, it's really important to not just like have all your eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is my identity, this is who I am, this is my purpose. And then something happens and you're like, oh my God, I don't know who I am. Well, I think that really encapsulates who Alli Burns is. Not that you can encapsulate it in a few sentences or 50 minutes, but I just want to thank you so much for being on SL24/7, Alli. It's an honor as always, but it's been such an honor to sit down and talk with you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, of course. And we will see you on the next episode of SL24/7.
See ya.